I see that we meet again. Welcome to Godless Panthers, Christianity is Creepy, Part 6. We left off in Part 5 with the homeschool convention in Texas, in which Ken Ham was the major speaker. A group of science education advocates protested the event. Ham said of the protesters, "These people are a minority in this nation as they are in this protest. Christians need to rally this nation to have kids taught the truth about science, the difference between science that builds our technology, which we love and agree on, versus science, historical or origins science, which is about the past." Okay, rally this nation is dominionist code. Creationism and the attempt to indoctrinate an entire generation with that bullshit is a method of paving the way to the kind of theocracy that the Hamroids would like to ultimately see come to fruition. Here is another quote from Ham. "Many Christians have been duped into accepting the false idea that there is a neutral position that they can take in regard to social issues. Some Christians even accept the myth that the U.S. Constitution declares that there should be a separation of church and state. God's word, however, makes it clear that there is no neutral position. God's people need to unashamedly and uncompromisingly stand on the Bible and its absolute standards. We need to proclaim a Christian worldview and the gospel, all the while giving answers for the hope we have." He sounds just like David Barton there. What else can we notice? The presupposition that the Bible is absolute truth is a theocratic concept. Chapter 7. Presuppositional Apologetics. This leads to presuppositional apologetics. It appears that this gig is gaining popularity among the creationists, and they have become quite fond of it. I am late to the party, and at this point, just about every YouTube atheist has weighed in on it. Presuppositional apologetics has been stomped on, clomped on, romped on, it's been shit on and spit on, it's been smashed, bashed, trashed, it's been panned and shit-canned, it's been bumped, trumped, and humped. The pump don't work because the vandals took the handle. Now we're just going to stand over its grave till we're sure that it's dead. We can't talk about presuppositional apologetics without talking about the master spewer of such bullshit, Psi 10 Bruggencate. Psi starts out by establishing that our collective knowledge is only a tiny portion of what there is to know. Actually, he claims 1%, but I say that such a percentage can't be applied to that sort of thing, so we'll say a tiny portion. Then Psi goes on to ask, in all that is unknown, could it be revealed that everything you claim to know is wrong? He establishes that knowledge, logic, and reason can only be supplied to us by the Christian God. From that, he concludes that those outside his lunatic cult can't make any knowledge claims without borrowing from his worldview. That's just the skinny on it. And now for my commentary. If everything, meaning literally everything that I know to be true, is actually wrong, then it would require that my entire life is just an illusion. I'm living in a matrix. On a pragmatic level, it is reasonable to assume that I am not just a brain in a jar imagining all of this. By not claiming absolute certainty about everything in the way that religious nuts do, all I am doing is establishing that I can be reasoned with. I have no doubt that future acquisition of collective knowledge will reveal that I am wrong about many things that I currently believe to be true. Again, I can be reasonable about my beliefs. The presuppositionalist, by establishing absolute certainty that a book of fables is indisputably true, is stating that he cannot and will not be reasoned with. Then let's look at the basic concept behind their presupposition. Forget about which book they have chosen to be absolute truth, but just the basic concept, that there is such a thing as a book that contains absolute truth and can't even be questioned, disputed, and much less disproven. There is not, nor can there possibly be, such a book. The precepts contradict themselves by establishing that there is such a thing as a realm of knowledge that has not yet been obtained, but that there is also a book that contains all possible knowledge, thus bringing us to the end of knowledge, such that nothing can be added or changed. Pick one of those. Then there is the problem with the binary approach to certainty. According to these goons, everything is either revealed by God, therefore absolutely certain, or absolutely uncertain. There are degrees of certainty, ranging from as close as we can get to absolute certainty to maybe true to a remote possibility. Degrees of certainty allow us to function in the world. Progress and acquisition of knowledge and technology is based on the middle ground of certainty. This may be true. Let's find out by testing it. This might work. Let's try. If it turns out to be wrong, try something else. That's progress. That's what adds to humanity as a whole. Dogmatic, authoritarian, unyielding certainty based on imaginary hobgoblins adds nothing. It's destructive. Yes, I can and do make knowledge claims because new knowledge needs to be based on previous knowledge. I do not borrow anything from Psy's sick, twisted, fucked up worldview. Nothing. I hope I made myself clear. The establishment of the Christian God being the agent that supplies knowledge is just arbitrary. Why not Krishna, Zeus, Allah, or even Bugs Bunny? Why the Christian God? Because and only because Bruggencate said so. That's the extent of the evidence that he can provide. But Psy has this little song and dance about how he doesn't have to provide evidence to non-believers because he will not have his precious cosmic goo-goo fuck judged by those who are not among his faithful bootlickers. He says the same about providing evidence for the claim made in his ancient comic book. In one video that I watched, a young man had a debate with Psy in which Bruggencate stated something to the effect of, I have evidence for my God, but you have to promise to worship it and love it and pray to it, etc., which is saying that he really has no evidence and that he's not willing to learn what evidence is and how it works. Psy also makes the claim that atheists secretly believe in his idiotic deity but refuse to admit that. If Psy is right about that, how does he know? That would require not just words in a magic storybook, but the ability to read other people's minds. Prove it, motherfucker. In order to prove that Psy can read my mind, I would be able to write a few sentences on a piece of paper and telepathically send the message to Psy and see him write the same sentences exactly, to the punctuation mark. Verbatim, and not David Barton's version of verbatim, the real definition. If Psy could provide this level of evidence, he would just supply the evidence instead of playing word games and making dumb excuses as to why he shouldn't have to supply evidence. Chapter 8, Skepticism, Presuppositionalism, and Evidence. The skeptics were wrong about the Wright brothers. The skeptics said that a self-propelled flying machine could not be built, and the Wright brothers proved them wrong. No. A good skeptic says that unless evidence can be provided to the contrary, we maintain the default position pending evidence. I have no emotional attachment to being an atheist. If there comes along concrete, testable, verifiable, falsifiable, repeatable evidence for a God, I simply change from the default position on it to, okay, now it appears that there really is some cosmic cupcake out there. It would not hurt my feelings. It would not cause any emotional distress. I would just change my personal opinion on the matter and move on. Those skeptical of the Wright brothers had reason to doubt the invention of a flying machine, the reason being countless failed attempts. Some of those attempts resulted in injury and death. Unless there is evidence to the contrary, Orville and Wilbur Wright would most likely make one more failed attempt. What did the Wright brothers do? They delivered. and the skeptics changed their position in light of new evidence. A skeptic can be reasoned with. A skeptic will change his position when the evidence dictates that he must do so. A presuppositionalist must maintain their position as a constant despite evidence to the contrary. They have to stick to the Bible as absolute truth no matter what. So, what if the Wright brothers were presuppositionalists? They would say, among all the knowledge not yet obtained, could there be a flying machine? They would ask, are you absolutely certain that a flying machine can't exist? They would declare that you know there is such a thing as a flying machine, but you just hate the idea, so you pretend it can't happen. They would demand that you don't believe that a flying machine could happen because you have no moral compass. They would make bullshit excuses as to why they do not need to provide evidence of their ability to build such a machine. And the Wright brothers would have gained a faithful following of true believers. But there is one thing that they never would have done. They never would have built a fucking airplane. Someone else would have at some point, but not a presuppositionalist. I'm going to present another example in which the skeptics had to change their position. In 1876, Thomas Edison sang "Mary Had a Little Lamb" to a device. That device recorded that sound onto a piece of tinfoil, literally a piece of tinfoil, such that it could be played back. He captured sound. The earliest manufacturers of the talking machine took the invention on the road to demonstrate it to the public. Crowds of people came to see that which they had never seen before, a device that could record and play back sound. Were there skeptics? Yes, absolutely. In 1876, a machine that could capture your voice and play it back was a spectacular claim. Sound, harnessed and controlled. Elusive, ephemeral, ethereal sound. They thought it can't be done. They thought, unless there is spectacular evidence for this spectacular claim. The showman who demonstrated the device invited audience members to speak into the device for the demonstration of its ability. What did the skeptics do? What would you do? They spoke foreign languages, they made funny noises, and made up nonsense words to catch the gimmick. What did the talking machine do? It delivered the spectacular evidence for the spectacular claim. There were no excuses as to why the machine was not able to speak Spanish or French. No one was told that they were not worthy of seeing the evidence. The audience was not told that the skeptics among them would ruin the ability for the machine to work properly. Nobody had to promise anything for the evidence to be presented. Nobody had to sign a statement of faith. Spectacular evidence was delivered for a spectacular claim. Thomas Edison was no presuppositionalist. There is no foreseeable limit to what science can add to the world. Presuppositionalism can add childish word games, and that's it. Chapter 9. Back to history. Christian right has come up with a new gig, hijacking Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. Remember, in Part 5 of this series, I brought up the protest of the Texas Homeschool Convention in which Ken fucking Ham was a keynote speaker. I'm going back to that, more specifically a response that was directed to Aaron Ra and the other protesters who organized a conference at the Houston Museum of Natural Science. There was one Dr. David Shorman who actually attempted to get the museum to cancel the pro-science conference on the ground that the museum was sponsoring religious intolerance and bigotry. I will read a few paragraphs from Shorman's blog with some commentary and then play a clip from one of Aaron Ra's videos in which Aaron has a conversation with David Shorman that demonstrates the level of dishonesty that these people are willing to sink to. The following is from Shorman's blog, which is titled Studying His Word and His Works.